Hey, quick editor's note before we get going with the episode. There's about 3 seconds early on where Jackson's audio doubles up on itself. I have no idea why it does this or how to fix it, but it'll go away very quickly. Sorry for the weirdness. Enjoy the episode.
Standing on that ledge, you think you're gonna fly. If you take that long last step, we'll have to say goodbye.
Hello, and for the 100th time, welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. For your 100th time, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And for the 100th time, I am your host, Jackson Keller.
That's right. We've done this 100 goddamn times. We've had 100 episodes so far. We're going to make 100 The Lion King, but we're like, hey, no, that's episode 100. We got to do something special for that. We got to come up with something clever, something unique. And by unique, we mean we're going to go back to the start.
Complete rehash is on the docket today, but unless you're one of our lovely patrons, you don't know that because we never released the original episode.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, is that today we're releasing our very first recorded episode of Rogue One to our patrons. And we're gonna rehash it as a full release for everyone else, and actually go back and talk about this movie with a little bit more clarity of time and also skill, because now we know what we're doing, and we're not trying to count the number of people who died in it, which was what I did that very first episode, and it was a nightmare, and I'm very happy that we didn't do that again.
Can you imagine if you had done that in every single movie that you've seen? Because you watch a lot of movies more than me, but like even so, probably about half the movies that you watch are for the show. So can you imagine if you did that for every single one?
I'm like just trying to think, because we've had some movies with some big death counts before, like Dunkirk. Could you imagine Dunkirk? Oh man,
I was thinking about that actually too during the first action scene when all the like thermal detonators are going off. I'm like, I can't believe Sean ever did this.
That movie. It's like a 2-hour, 13-minute movie or something like that, and I think it took me like 4 hours to watch because I kept pausing it and then starting it again.
Amazing.
It was a nightmare. That, as I said, you can listen to the Nightmare on our Patreon, but if you don't want to do that and you want to actually just listen to us talk about Rogue One, this is the great place to do it, because we have a lot of Star Wars opinions, just like literally every other asshole on the internet. So we're gonna share some of them. I don't think we're as vitriolic as a lot of them. We're a lot more tempered with our Star Wars takes, but you know.
We could have gone for that easy money. We could have sat there and put out 100 videos on YouTube about how the beta libs have ruined The Last Jedi, and SJW agenda per Ryan Johnson has ruined Star Wars forever. We could have taken the low road, but we haven't. We have moderate, nuanced takes.
And let's see, video about cutting the heads off of hundreds of Rey dolls. Upload? No, delete.
Oh, I didn't realize we were rebranding.
Yeah, we're taking a hard left here. Or should I say a hard right?
Ayo!
Alright, this has been absolutely fucking nothing. Let's actually talk about Rogue One.
Do we have to?
We do, because we promised. We promised ourselves, we promised our listeners, we're going to talk about Rogue One. And I'm going to let you go first and assume that the years have not been kind to it in your eyes.
Every single time I watch this movie, it gets a little bit worse. And by a little bit worse, I mean a lot worse. If you're so inclined to go back and watch, listen to our original episode that we did about this, you'll notice that I am a lot more temperate, a lot more mild on the movie. I come to its defense in certain aspects. That has all changed now. Fuck this movie. It's really boring. But I think I have a pretty cogent reason for why I gave this movie as much rope as I did, and why I even liked it when I first saw it. When I first watched the movie in the theater, I was pretty into it. I quite liked Rogue One. So how did we get here? How did we fall so far? And Sean, I don't know if you want me to launch into my political theorizing right now, or if you want to give.
I'll just drop my take because it's way simple and way easy. I never really liked this movie, honestly. I thought it was always kind of boring and weird and just generally unnecessary. And we're gonna, I think, dive more into the necessity of this intermediary in between movies that Disney was trying to pull for a little bit there before the bottom fell out with Solo. But we'll come back to that later. I think that's more spoilery discussion in general. Yeah, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I was never really that impressed with it. I thought it was fine, but like there's just so much weird incongruities with like what it's trying to say and what it's actually doing. It clearly feels like something that was written, rewritten, changed, chopped up, stitched back together, and then brought to life with a bolt of lightning in Frankenstein's lab. That it kind of loses itself up its own ass in a lot of ways, and not in like a good, I have so many themes and ideas, more of like, I have everything, I'm just going to throw it all at until something sticks. And like, that's the other thing too, is that this movie, watching it again, I was thinking, I'm like, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. Oh my God, there's so much stuff happening in this fucking movie. How is it only 2 hours long?
Yeah, there's so much. It's so dense. Every single shot has so much going on.
Legitimately though.
No, legitimately. Star Wars memes notwithstanding. I was sitting there thinking, like, if you wanted to do this story justice and like have real characters and include all these different elements, you would probably need to make like a mini series.
Yeah. No, actually, I was thinking about that as I was watching this too. I'm like, this would not be a terrible mini series.
Yeah, you actually have some time for the characters to develop and some drama, because there are some theoretically interesting ideas on display here. There's just too many of them, and they're all underdeveloped. And like we see the.
But don't worry, we got a quippy robot.
We do have a quippy robot, and you know, like our Mafia 2 episode, I think that the first time I ended up like being more fond of the quippy robot than I had any right to be, just because I had character Stockholm syndrome, like in that game. Like, he was the only one with like an identifiable personality, aside from angry.
Right.
And even he was a little angry.
He was more like angsty. He kind of had like a teen Groot vibe.
He did have a teen Groot vibe. Everyone else was like, I'm so edgy, like, I'm gonna let you get shot. This is a war going on. And that was actually always one of the things that frustrated me about the movie, and that I think that the tone, the decision to make it about like the seedy underbelly of the rebellion, I think that's an interesting angle that doesn't really amount to anything, because by the end of it, we're back in very standard like Star Wars action land. Like that final battle, it feels identical to the one at the end of Force Awakens. It feels identical to the like big space battles at the end of Empire and Jedi. Yeah, it's just like the action itself is well presented. But once you lose that, you know, this isn't about, like, you know, the Skywalker dynasty. This isn't about, like, the legacy of the Force and the Jedi. And, you know, we're going to the seedy underbelly. Once that gets lost, it just becomes Star Wars again. And I thought the point of these movies, of these solo movies, was to be a little bit more experimental. And in some ways it is, and in other ways it's just a dull flat line. In all ways it's a dull flat line.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing, is I think it comes across as a dull flat line because it fluctuates between something interesting and just Star Wars too much. And like, when you balance it out, it just ends up being a dull flat line because it neither exists on the Star Wars side of things or the interesting side of things.
I think that's a fair way to put it. I think that's yeah. Well, I guess wrapping back around, well, since this is still reasonably non-spoiler territory.
I mean, I'm not super worried about spoilers with this one anyway, just because it's Rogue One. It came out 3 years ago at this point. The world saw it because it's a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, well, so that's actually the other thing too, is that, I think that the other reason I was willing to give this movie so much rope was that we didn't know how the whole Disney Star Wars thing was going to shake out yet. And now the proof is kind of in the pudding. They don't have any idea what they're doing. They've mismanaged this property so badly. Like, not to say that any individual movie is really terrible. I don't think they are. But, like, as a whole, in terms of, like, the direction of the franchise, they clearly are floundering and have no idea what the fuck they're doing. I
will say, just in defense of Disney, I think part of that is the fans of Star Wars are impossible to satiate.
The fans of Star Wars are impossible to satiate. This is true. And I mean, I guess on like a corporate level, having one movie that got the fans really riled up like Last Jedi did, and like sticking to that course probably isn't the best money-making idea. But then on the other hand, like, I think one of the reasons that Last Jedi turned out the way it did is that they didn't have any concrete plan of where to go after Force Awakens, and like based on statements and just what you see in the movies themselves, like that seems really clear to me. They had, remember when Colin Trevorrow was supposed to direct Episode 9?
Oof.
Yeah.
Good God.
So like, and with the benefit of hindsight and how this has all been kind of a shit show, like they shut down these anthology movies, which is crazy. It's crazy that Solo did as bad as it did. So that's one thing. And the other thing I think why I was kinder to this movie is that, so if you look at the month that it came out in theaters, it was December of 2016. Exactly, pretty much to the day, 1 month after the announcement of President-elect Donald J. Trump. And I, like many people at the time, had gone into full panic about the end of days. And so I think that the movie's rhetoric about rebellions are built on hope, we're gonna fight the fascies, we're gonna LARP as revolutionaries for a little bit, I think that really the movie benefited a whole lot, I think, in terms of what little thematic resonance it had from all the discussion about the worries of authoritarianism and stuff. But now that President Trump is just kind of a reality, it doesn't, not only does its take on like authoritarianism not land as much because the wound isn't as raw, at least in terms of the initial shock, right? But also the movie's take on like rebellions and authoritarianism is really simplistic and stupid. So
it's also like barely there. That's the other thing too. Is like it doesn't really seem to have anything it's trying to say. So like if you're looking for a movie that like will give you hope in this rebellion, all the message is just hope saves rebellions sometimes. Cool.
Which really, for all the talk of like this being the darker, seedy underbelly of Star Wars, that's just the original Star Wars. And I think, like, if we're talking about the political angle, the thing about discussions of the Star Wars franchise that continue to frustrate me is that Star Wars was always super, super political. George Lucas basically made like a weird 70s auteur like indie movie and turned it into a big old blockbuster. Star Wars is full of like Vietnam era angst of, like he based the rebellion off the Viet Cong, for God's sake, and then you have the all the ham-fisted political commentary in the prequel trilogy. God damn, I miss George Lucas.
I mean, even beyond that, they're literally called stormtroopers. Darth Vader is Germanic for father. Like, the Nazi symbolism could not be any clearer if they tried. And now it's just kind of a little waffling about it. Moving on. Like, I guess if we're going to dive into a little bit of hot takes already, Rian Johnson almost had something really, really interesting with his Last Jedi that I really wish had seen to fruition. And I feel like, for whatever reason, I still trust Rian Johnson a lot. Like, I think that, like, I feel like his vision wanted to see it into that more grayish area that, like, if you're familiar with the movie, go listen to our podcast episode on it. I explain it way better there. I'm just going to kind of touch on it really quick. Where, like, I feel like he's the type of person that would have pushed it that way. But, like, you can't do that in Disney's Star Wars. It has to be too neat.
Last Jedi is a weird one. I almost think that before Rise of Skywalker comes out, we should do a Redux of that one too, just because of all that. At the time we recorded it, I don't think we realized to what extent it became such a sore point in terms of, like, fan and political conversation. Because my general feeling about The Last Jedi at the time, and I haven't seen it since, is that it didn't go far enough, and that for all of its posturing about being, like, breaking away from old things, it still felt too Star Warsy to me. And when it comes to being Star Warsy, I mean, like, these themes are well-trodden ground, these ideas. And George Lucas, I think part of the appeal of the franchise is that it was such a personal creation. I am a full George Lucas apologist. That man, he's got his flaws, but he didn't deserve to have the vicious fan and like the vicious fan relationship that he had with the prequels. It's really sad that he has his baby that he sold away to Disney. And I mean, now it seems like he's off at his little ranch making, like, independent movies just for himself and nobody else. And you know what? That's great. Good for George, but it's still kind of sad that it ended up this way.
I can't blame him, though, either. As I said, Star Wars fans, I mean, arguably ourselves included, are a nasty bunch.
Yes, that is fair.
So, like, if you're like, I can sell this for a shit ton of money and get the fuck out, let somebody else deal with these assholes, I would. I don't blame him.
Oh, God. Well, shit. So do you just want to go into spoilers then?
Let's talk spoilers.
Yeah. Where do we even want to start with this one?
I mean, I think a decent starting point is actually with my question of, what does this movie do to earn its existence? Like, does it have a point? Is it pointless? Because, like, I think answering this question, I think, will encompass a lot of our other problems that we have with the movie.
You know what? That's a fair point. That's a good idea. So, let's just rattle down the list, shall we, of potential validations for this movie's existence. And the first one that I can think of, well, maybe it helps to clarify what we mean by that first, because famously at this point, all of the main characters die at the end of this, and it tells a story that we already know the outcome to. The last shot is basically, like, you could play New Hope immediately after this last shot, and it will go, like, seamlessly into that story. The outcome is so predetermined that, like, as far as the tension of are they going to recover the Death Star plans, obviously that's not the story tension here. So there's got to be something else. And so, when you have a cast of characters that die, perhaps this might be the idea as far as, like, a moment to moment of, we're going to introduce these interesting new characters and we're going to make you care about them. So even though you know that the Death Star is going to get destroyed ultimately, you still care about what happens to Jin and the monk and Cassian and, everyone else.
You can tell that it's really successful by the fact that we know two names.
I was gonna say, interesting is the key word there.
Yeah, we've seen this movie 3-4 times, somewhere in that vicinity. We got like 3 or 4 names down at this point.
So do they ever even say the name of the monk guy's buddy, like with the like heavy weapons guy cannon? Because he's a pretty prominent character, but I don't know if they ever even say it.
Is it Chirrut or is Chirrut the monk?
Chirrut's the monk.
I don't know then. I feel like they might. The problem with this movie, I think, as far as characters go, is that they do say people's names fairly frequently, but it's usually under like heavy blaster fire, and it's Star Wars names. So like the first time you hear a name, you have to get a clear read on it. So like when they're like, all right, was that Chirrut? What was that? Was that anything?
When he screams Chirrut's name, I thought he kept calling him Jiren, like the villain of the Tournament of Power in Dragon Ball.
Yeah, like there's too much noise. Like it doesn't ever let us hear their names clearly. That's really more of a nitpick. It shows some problems with like how they characterize the people in the movie, but like it's not a huge deal.
No. And so, you have your Star Wars names, and as far as like new characters, it's not like we have these are bad ideas for new characters even. And that's the strange thing. And this is why I say that I think to make good on all these ideas, you're going to need a like mini series to take care of it. So like let's Chirrut's the prime example because like
He's cool.
He's like this weird, like not quite Jedi, like this Force like ideologue who isn't really Force sensitive or necessary, like basically like a kind of like a Jedi fanboy, but not quite. Like he's a believer in the teachings without being a full Jedi himself. Which is
Force sensitive.
Yeah, and that's an interesting angle, particularly due to the fact that like we see where like the lightsabers are developed, and like that's a prominent setting is the city of Jeddah and the old temple, and like that should be a cool ass setting, but in practice it just ends up being Mos Eisley again.
A Mos Eisley that gets nuked from orbit.
The Mos Eisley that gets nuked from orbit, scratch one desert planet, which apparently there are a million of, which I guess makes sense.
I will say though too, like we don't ever actually see the Jedi Temple, which is a bummer. Like, it's paid lip service, but we never actually, like, get it, which is always something that's kind of been lingering in the back of my mind of, like, just, like, a quick shot or something would have been cool.
Like, you see that shot of, like, the ruined Obi-Wan statue. I know that's not actually Obi-Wan, but, that big ruined Obi-Wan statue. But that's all you get, and otherwise it's just another, like, dirty Star Wars, like, slum town. And so there's that, and then you have this introduction of factions of like this extremist faction of the rebellion with Forrest Whitaker's character.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and that ends up being absolutely nothing at all.
That's almost less than nothing.
Like, especially because, and I think this is where like the movie's like weird political mixed messages like start, because we get this we get this declaration that Saw as some kind of extremist, and the only thing we see him do that's really extreme is give the pilot defector to the hentai tentacles, which doesn't seem to have any long-term consequences.
Well, the mind enema is supposed to like drive them insane, but it doesn't. He's a little out of it for about half an hour, and then suddenly he's fine. Right?
Like, so what is it that makes him extreme? What is it that the rebellion doesn't approve of? Like, obviously it's not a matter of like reform versus revolution. The rebellion's already doing shady things and killing people, and like they're not going to the Senate and like.
I just really quick want to posit something here about midway through, and just kind of something for us to marinate on going forward.
Okay. Is
the problem with this movie consequences?
That might be a nice, neat way to summarize it.
Because like consequences, for the most part, like there aren't any. Like there's promised consequences that end up being non-issues, like the loss of the holodrive that proves that there's a fault in the Death Star. There's no real consequence to that. Like, there's like threatened consequences, but that kind of goes nowhere. The pilot's mind enema, no actual consequences. The blowing up even of Scarif doesn't feel that consequential in the grand scheme of things.
I mean, what the blowing up of Scarif mostly feels like, and I think the reason that one in particular doesn't feel consequential is that we know. So, like, Grand Moff Tarkin orders it. That doesn't really establish anything new about his character. We already know that he's a bastard willing to, like, blow up entire planets to, spread fear throughout the Empire. And really, so it just feels like a way to, like, killing all the characters off just feels like a way to tie everything up in a neat, tidy bow. Like, you get rid of Krennic, you get rid of the heroes, they're all gone, so you don't have to wonder about where they're at or, like, what they're doing in future movies. Even though, like, you could easily have them pop up in, one of the later movies, and, it's not like Luke, Leia, and Han were the entire rebellion in the originals even, so they could have just been off doing other missions, being spies and shit.
But they wanted it to, like, hurt at the end, because I think they realized that, like, we have no emotional impact anywhere, so we just need to kill them off as an effort to give some punch at the end of this movie, and it just still doesn't work because their characters are so uneven that you never care about them.
Yeah, and, like, so killing them off to make us sad is fine, but...
Oh, it's fine if you kill them, but the kid in the beginning of Quiet Place, that's a problem.
Fuck that kid. No, so, yeah, you didn't let me finish my butt statement. So let's, I want to dive in to some of the characters, particularly Jyn, because I think she also plays into the weird non-political politicalness of it, and that she's our main character, and like, she's got a decent enough backstory, and like a decent enough hook of, she's kind of a lone wolf out for herself. She's been let down by the rebellion, the Empire's taken her father, she's just trying to make her way.
Most of the stuff that we're mostly told, honestly.
That's the other problem. There's a lot of telling rather than showing in this movie.
And, like, the part that really stuck me out is when she, like, kicks all those stormtroopers' asses, and then they're like, oh, by the way, she's, like, a ninja. And I'm like, wait, what? She's some super powerful soldier? What?
What is with these new Star Wars movies and having a lady beat up everyone with a stick? Not even like a real weapon. They just pull out a stick and beat up a bunch of stormtroopers. Like, why is Rey's most prominent weapon a stick?
Give him a gun.
Or like, I don't know. Just like they're especially it's so weird because, like, stormtrooper armor's always been paper thin, but surely it could withstand the blunt force of a stick. I guess this is the Ewok argument all over.
I was gonna say this is the Ewok argument.
Yeah. Whatever. Regardless, that's a not much of an issue. But yeah, like, it is weird. Like, I guess, like, it's supposed to be implied that she got trained to be this big badass by, like, Saw, but we don't know anything about their relationship or care. So fuck it. Yeah. So my big problem is that her character is pretty incoherent, in addition to just being uninteresting. Like, her and Cassian and everyone else who isn't the monk kind of just default to angry in all of their scenes. Like, ooh, like, I'll shoot ya, like, if you weigh me down. Like, they do that edgy, like, Solid Snake pre-character development kind of thing.
Yeah, they want you to care about people, and then they just have that person turn around and kill someone in cold blood in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Cassian too, but we'll put a pin in that. So Jyn, she gets roped into the rebellion fight that she doesn't want to be a part of. Rebellion strikes her a deal, like, hey, well, we broke you out of the labor camp, so you're gonna do us a solid and find your daddy and find Saw Gerrera, and because important things are happening. Then he can fuck off to wherever. She's like, fine, whatever. So she goes, she gets some speeches from her dad and her surrogate dad, and now she is emboldened to go rescue her father, knowing the truth that he's been like trying to save, work for the rebellion from within. Sure, whatever. Now, where it starts to get dicey for me is that this whole non-consequential section on the Imperial development planet where Cassian is deciding whether or not to dome her dad, and then he gets killed by rebel bombs. She specifically points out that it's rebel bombs that killed her father. Now, this doesn't have to be a contradictory thing. She can still be filled with hope and purpose while wrestling with the fact that ultimately the rebellion's the one that pulled the trigger on her dad. That's some nice moral gray area that would seem to fit with the whole aesthetic, the whole gritty war movie aesthetic that the movie's going for. But then she's just all in. She just goes in, gives a handsome speech, gets a nod of recognition from famed Star Wars character Mon Mothma, trademark, and then suddenly she's the hero of the rebellion without ever thinking about her dad again.
Hooray! Character arcs.
No consequences, and why? If she was such a selfish person before, why? And even until now, finding her dad seemed to be her top priority over anything helping the rebellion. I get that her dad believed in the cause, but the cause, save the rebellion, save the dream. God, what was with Forrest Whitaker's affect here? He's doing a Star Wars.
Well, you see, he had robot body parts, so he needed to talk like that.
Do you like how he had the breathing thing to make him look like Darth Vader? There are good people on both sides and bad people on both sides.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah. So he's got his breathing apparatus, but it makes a lot of his rousing speeches kind of hard to take seriously. And yeah, I don't know. It's a big whole amount of nothing. Really thematically incoherent, politically incoherent. So I guess if we're trying to answer the question, coming back around to our central question of what does this movie have to justify itself? It's certainly not themes. It's certainly not characters.
Well, allow me to answer that with the only thing that I can think that this movie does to try to justify its own existence, which is to solve a plot hole from A New Hope.
I'm gonna take that statement and expand it even further. I'm gonna say how this movie justifies its existence is fan service.
Correct. No, entirely. But I'm just saying the core basis of this movie is to answer why is there a hole that leads directly to the heart of the Death Star that blows it up. That is the central reason this movie exists is someone said we need to have a reason for this to exist so that people on the internet will stop making jokes about it. Which is infuriating. People are going to make jokes about literally everything. You don't need to solve this. You don't need to worry about cinema sins. They're going to ding you for something anyway. If it's that the scene does not contain a lap dance. LOL, am I right?
Am I right, fellow gamer?
Exactly. There's no... Fuck you for even trying to appease this. This is a story that didn't need to be told just to justify why there's a vent shaft that blows up the Death Star. That's the stupidest fucking thing in the world. Go fuck yourself.
I mean, I think the best video about Rogue One is the famous Red Letter Media one where they just keep shouting about lightsaber. ATST, ATST. I mean, that's really all you need to know about the movie. Plus Mike shouting, "It broke new ground."
Oh man, the fucking in the same vein of fan service, Pandu Baba. I can't believe why was he on Jeddah that got nuked 3 minutes later, and how did he end up in A New Hope?
Guess he was on his way to the airport, but thank God he got the last flight out of Jeddah.
Yeah, seriously. That's another thing. It's like it's pretty much not inconsequential unto itself. Like that is the type of thing that's fan service that in under most circumstances you'd be like, yes, I'm okay with this happening. The problem is that this movie is extended fan service. I don't think that there's a problem with slipping Pandu Baba in as like a, hey, here he is type of thing. Remember this guy. If he was the only thing in there, there'd be jokes about him. It'd be weird. We'd move on. Disney would eventually release a standalone episode that explains how Pandu Baba gets off Jeddah and ends up in Mos Eisley Spaceport, but that's neither here nor there. They have to answer jokes, right? Like they can't just let it happen.
You know what else is weird fan service that always rubbed me the wrong way? Pretty much everything about Darth Vader in this movie.
Oh my god, I love that he makes a pun.
He goes straight to the pun zone. He built a giant Sauron castle on Mustafar as apparently some like self-flagellation punishment for his ultimate failure to remind himself that he'll never be whole again. And he goes to the pun zone and murders a bunch of rebels, which is like on the surface as fan service, it is cool. It's a slick piece of action, but it doesn't mean anything.
So like, here's the problem with that though. Like as I said, there's a problem with so much fan service is that it drowns out any sort of coherence to the movie. It takes what like by themselves, fan service is not necessarily a bad thing. Pandu Baba, not necessarily a bad thing. Darth Vader wrecking rebel shit, not necessarily a bad thing. But when it just so much of it drowns out any coherence for the rest of the movie. You get so caught up going, why the fuck were C-3PO and R2-D2 there? Why? What's the purpose? And no longer worried about Jin and everybody else. And like, it's the type of thing that permeates through the script itself. It's no longer just an issue of the viewers being like, what is going on? It's now an issue of the script going, what is going on? Where can we fit another AT-AT in here?
Well, it's so true because like I said, I wanted to come back to Cassian, and like he early on in the movie to kind of set the tone for the kind of character he is. He's got his informant. When it looks like they're about to be compromised, he guns him down. Like it's like, shit's all right, and blasts him. Cool character introduction. Cool idea to have like the like shady underbelly of the rebellion that keeps things going and keeps the lights on while Luke's out, doing, grand space wizard spectacle shit. Big problem is that they want us to like sort of wrestle with the morality of what's going on in terms of this revolution. Because it makes it clearer than ever. Like this is an armed revolution against the government and all that entails.
They mentioned it a couple times too. Like even with Mon Mothma and stuff like that, she's like, "Hey, we're about to go to war. People are going to die."
Yeah. So like that's more in the forefront than ever. But also like. We also want to clap when we see the ATSTs blowing up like our scrappy underdogs and Darth Vader hacking them down like Jason Voorhees. We want to feel like we're supporting the rebellion because rebellions are built on hope, but we also are being told to. There are good and bad people on both sides. You got to do shady things for the rebellion. We're supposed to see a lot of what they're doing is questionable, but the actual like message
also
of the
funny.
movie, yes, the actual message of the movie is so simplistic that it's just like rebellions are built on hope. Like, well, wait a minute, I thought rebellions were built on like wet works and assassination. Like, it's really incoherent.
Plus, like as I said, I jokingly said that plus they're funny, and that's the part that really sticks out to me is like K2SO or KSO2 or whatever the hell the robot's name is goofy the entire time, making jokes, and like the whiplash from I just shot this man in cold blood to haha funny robot saying funny quip is absurd. Like it's so hard to laugh at something like this after just watching what you had witnessed. I don't understand why they felt like we needed a comic relief character other than because the other Star Wars movies had comic relief characters.
Because they knew that the movie would be too fucking dour and boring without one. And, I mean, they were right.
But, like, honest to God, I think the movie would be better without a comic relief character in general. Like, I think that the K2SO makes the movie arguably worse.
Maybe. I'd have to think about that one a little bit more, because I'm trying to imagine, because at least, like, whenever K2SO makes a quip, I feel the movie have a pulse for a second. It's like there's some human emotion being displayed, even if it's sardonic angst.
I mean, honestly, in those moments, to me, it does have a pulse, but it's like the last pulse of a kicking leg before the soul leaves the body. Because it doesn't feel like a pulse. It feels like something that they need to have in the movie just to have it. Like everything else does. It's a Disney movie. Marvel has those sardonic people in there. We gotta have the sardonics. It's a Star Wars movie. Gotta have the sardonic people. If you don't have a quippy robot, how can it be a Star Wars movie? What are you doing with yourselves?
So, to recap, Rogue One wants to be a gritty political drama examining the realities of political violence, both state-sponsored and against the state. It wants to be a fun, exciting Star Wars movie full of fan service, and it wants to be both those things, and many more. It wants to introduce plot threads to make further future movies about, but they won't now.
Yes.
It wants to do a lot of things.
Just everything. It wants to be everything, and it ultimately is nothing. As I said, this movie is a Frankenstein's monstrosity of script ideas that went nowhere, and they took from one script, put into this one, changed another script, added it into this, and we ended up with this. Like, you can feel from scene to scene how varied this script originally was. Like, every little bit of it is so disjointed from every other scene. Like, here's just a weird little thing I noticed. In the final scene, we have a bunch of battles going on while our main squad of heroes is playing a crane game in the archives. I'm gonna ignore the fact that they're playing a crane game. That's stupid, but you don't need me to tell you that. And more focused on the fact that, like, there's battle. Like, each battle that I said, there was, like, a cut, like, from battle scene to battle scene, kind of showing it all. And then at one point, it cuts back to our heroes shooting out glass and starting to climb out before cutting back to 5 more minutes of battles. Like, it clearly was worried that we were going to forget what was going on down there, so it needed to include this in the middle of this before cutting back to the overarching battle scenes. And it's such a weird, out-of-place scene that I don't know who looked at it and said, we need to intercut this in here. Because it's so brief. It's maybe 5 seconds long of just a cut back to our main squad before a return to the battles, with no interjections on either side of it other than that. It's bizarre. And it serves to really underscore how Frankenstein this script is, because someone said this needs to be here because it was in one edition of the script, and now it doesn't make any sense to put it in this spot, but it was here in one version.
Ooh!
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I can say about this movie, frankly. Like, yeah. I mean, I don't know where else to go from here. Like, it's such an incoherent mess of, like, like, I'm so hung up on the gritty war drama stuff. Like, you could have made an interesting, like, character-driven story set in the Star Wars universe that, like, exposes the seedy underbelly of the rebellion, but they needed to make a Star Wars movie, so they did that.
I guess my one question I do have for us is, this is something that I've been kind of marinating on since I watched it, because I think it's a very interesting question of, if you were to watch the Star Wars series now in a linear order, as in, like, episode 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, would Rogue One be a better movie because it wouldn't feel as pointless? Like, knowing what we know about the Star Wars universe now, we know where Rogue One is going to go, where it's going to end. For someone that would be new to the Star Wars universe, witnessing Rogue One for the first time in chronological order, would it make more sense and like help to set things up that take place in A New Hope in a better way? Like, I think that that's something that I don't think that we theoretically could answer it. I think that we can raise points about, well, you know, a lot of the pandering isn't going to make a lot of sense. It still has a lot of like weird dead ends that don't go anywhere. But I'm more curious about, like, from a standpoint of a child. Like, you know, put yourself back in your 8-year-old shoes when you were watching Star Wars for the first time. And, like, you know, it's 2019, you know, Star Wars Episode 9 is coming out this year, right? Yeah, this year.
Yeah, this year.
And, like, your dad is for the first time ever showing you all these movies. And, like, you know, you get up to Rogue One. And how do you feel about it? Like, I'm very curious about that. And this is the type of thing that, like, I feel like we won't know for a couple more years. And, like, until that generation starts writing their own think pieces. And I'm very excited to hear what they have to say about it. Because for us, it's a very weird relic of something that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's Disney throwing something out being like, here's answering questions that no one in our generation or earlier was asking. But, except in jest. But for their generation, who might be seeing this as a standalone movie before A New Hope, it's setting things up as opposed to answering questions. Does it work better like that?
Well, I mean, so, like, as far as I need an important clarification here. Are we talking from the perspective of, like, literal children watching it in the moment, or, like, children who grow up with it and, like, sort of thinking back on it? Because I think those are going to be two very different experiences. Because I think that, weirdly enough, Disney's cancellation of the anthology films makes this and Solo even weirder relics in isolation. Like, there's just these two weird little interquels between Sith and New Hope that, like, don't actually add much.
I think that's actually a good question, because I think it changes with the addition of Solo, because I have been thinking about this basically with Rogue One in isolation, not including Solo, because I think Rogue One could present some interesting questions for A New Hope for a new viewer of the series. I think adding Solo in might actually taint the next three afterwards.
Yeah, like, ooh, I don't know. Like, so you have, and I think, like, actual kids are gonna be confused. I think that if you show it to them in chronological order, which I suspect not a lot of parents will do. I think a lot of parents, like, there's such huge debate, but I think generally speaking, most parents start with New Hope, whether they go through the original trilogy or do that, you know, much publicized, like, order of doing New Hope, Empire, prequels, Jedi. Like, it seems like there aren't a lot of people who recommend watching them and showing them to the kids in chronological order. But, you know, kind of disregarding that, if you do watch them in chronological order, I think an actual kid would be very confused, because you have, you know, episodes 1, 2, and 3, you know, all about, like, Anakin and Obi-Wan. And Anakin is technically in Rogue One, but he's only in it for a bit. And that's probably, the Darth Vader sections are probably the only section a kid would respond to, because I can remember, like, being a kid, the first thought on my mind would be like, well, where's Obi-Wan? Like, where's Anakin? Like, where's anybody? Like, who are these people? Why should I care about them? And the movie obviously doesn't make a very good case for caring about them on its own. Solo, in terms of being a prequel, might be even weirder, because, like, Han Solo is a character that culturally we care about, but if you're watching Solo first, he's also just this weird new guy that's going to be important later. So, I mean, that one's more kid-friendly in terms of being, like, wacky, but I don't know.
Where the fuck would you put these movies in, like, a viewing order?
In the
trash. Yeah, I was going to say in the trash.
Yeah, I mean, because, like, really, they really don't add. On the show here, I've said many times that a good prequel, ideally, should change the way that you look at a character, or reinterpret events that you assumed you already had figured out pretty well. My go-to example, of course, is always Metal Gear Solid 3. Completely changes the way that you see the villain of the original Metal Gear and sort of all of the actions that take place afterwards. And to the credit of the prequels, this is what they attempted to do with Anakin. Because you have, very basic story. Anakin, good noble Jedi, seduced by the dark side. But the prequels, with their politicking and their dull, council meetings and all that other shit, what they were trying to do was show the ways, not just that Anakin fell to the dark side, but the way that the system failed him. It tried to put a bit of culpability on the Jedi themselves, which is actually one thing that I wish, in one of my favorite parts of Last Jedi, is that Luke acknowledges this. Luke is
oh, yeah.
I really hope they would do way more with that. Oh, yeah, Rey, you think the Jedi's so great? Well, they were, implicated in the, rise of Darth Sidious and Darth Vader and the reign of terror that's been spreading across the galaxy. I wish they had done more with that. So,
oh, absolutely. No, we'll come back to The Last Jedi, absolutely, honestly. I think it's worth doing,
yeah. But, yeah, so, what do we learn about, for these prequels, for Rogue One and for Solo? What do we learn? What does it recontextualize? Well, for Solo, we already know the answer is nothing. We talked about that a lot on the episode, how Han Solo's character arc just becomes a giant loop.
Yep.
Spinning its wheels forever.
Literally, the title of that episode is Character is a Sine Wave.
So, with Rogue One, again, what do we learn? That the rebellion maybe isn't as heroic as we thought until they are. So basically nothing. And Darth Vader's got a lava castle.
And tells dad jokes. I still maintain that the most important thing to come out of Rogue One is that Darth Vader is a fan of puns.
Careful not to choke on your aspirations. It's not even a good one.
It's not. It's the perfect dad joke. It's so good. God. It's so important. It's so important to the lore. All right. I have one final thing before we wrap up. This is, in fact, episode 100. So let's pay some lip service. Who lived? Who died? Who should have died?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Who lived? Mon Mothma.
Fuck yeah, Mon Mothma, Darth Vader. We got Amidala out there. It's not Amidala. It's Leia. I'm a dumb. So we got the cast of A New Hope that lived. Obviously, they need to live. Who died? Everyone else. Literally everyone.
So I think the question in this case is not who should have died, but who should have lived is maybe a more interesting question in this context.
No, absolutely.
So, Saw Gerrera, I'd say, first and foremost. And I know
you know what? I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, if I had to pick one person to live, I think it would be Saw, just because I think I would like to hear more about him.
And I know that before people come at me, I know that he's part of the cartoon or whatever. But I don't watch the cartoon, so I want to see him in a movie.
Yeah,
because the movies are what's important. So, yeah, and I think that and especially because of all the characters, his death is so lame. He doesn't even
so bad.
He doesn't even try. I get that he's
I'm done running. From what? What are you talking about?
What sins are you atoning for? You're not sacrificing yourself. You're doing nothing. You at least try to walk. Maybe have his mechanical leg break down and say, "There's no time. Go, Jin. You gotta save the dream." The dream. That would have been fine. But instead he just sort of stands there and eats it.
Yeah. It's weird. It's so weird.
So I'd save him. I think there's a case, with the way the movie's set up, you obviously couldn't do this. A case to be made for allowing the non-Jedi Force-sensitive character to go. You could do things with him, or maybe, again, if this was a mini-series or a longer movie, you could maybe develop him into a real character. But they didn't. I mean, that's just a kind of interesting idea. They just left percolating. So no, let him get blasted and just introduce another one. Redo.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody of the main cast that I would like to see live. Honestly, I'm kind of sympathetic towards the pilot. I think the pilot should have lived. Is that weird?
No, I don't think that's weird, but the pilot's character arc is basically Finn.
Yes, no, absolutely. But I think like even just having the pilot live to join the rebellion just as I don't need more. But like I just like a complete redemption arc I think would have been better. Like I feel like the other characters, I think their death is important if they would have been more fleshed out.
Yeah.
I think as it is though, I don't know that we need that.
Okay. Yeah. I can get down. I can get down with that. Anybody else?
The brain enema guy, the monster. Let him live.
Get a big old F in chat for hentai tentacles.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just was throwing it out there as a fun little aside, paying homage to our roots, you know.
And I mean, do we want to bloviate about how great we are? Do we want to talk about how we got great things coming, or should we just let that be implied?
Oh, I mean, you all know we're not done yet. We've got 100 episodes down, and we're not slowing down here at all. We missed a week, and you know what? We made it up by releasing 3 episodes. All right, we're not like, oh, we missed a week. I guess it's not a big deal if we miss another one or anything like that. No, we're like, we feel bad. We're gonna fucking up the ante next week to make sure that we hit everything that we promised. So
hell yes. Fuck.
Come back on Thursday. We got more. This is releasing on a Tuesday. 2 days from now, we're gonna talk about the Lion King movies. We're not stopping.
Both of them, the good one and the other one.
We haven't seen it yet. We can assume it's probably not gonna be the good one, but you know what? We'll find out.
And if you want to request the Lion King 1.5, be a patron on the $10 tier.
We'll talk about that in a hot second, because I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. Find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/helpus_Skippy. Find my work over at 25yearslatersite.com. I'm writing a shit ton of stuff for them. Go read that stuff.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me at twitch.tv/JacksonJKeller. Just kidding. I mostly stream with Sean and my friend Connor at Sean's channel and my friend Connor's channel at twitch.tv/Genghis_Con_. Fuck social media.
Fuck social media indeed, but I'm still on it because I am dumb. And you know who else is on social media? The podcast itself over on Twitter at BADH_cast. Tweet at us if you have ideas, stuff that you want us to talk about, anything like that. Or like if you just want to keep updates with the news that we're like, hey, here's this coming out next week or something like that. You can do that. Also, if you want to get in contact with us, you can do so on the Beating a Dead Horse Discord, which you get access to through the Beating a Dead Horse Patreon at patreon.com/BADHcast. No underscore on that one. My consistency is terrible. Don't at me. But for $1 a month, it gets you access to our Discord, and where you can get in better contact with us. But for $5 and $10 a month, you get access to our bonus episodes, where you can listen to our original recording of Rogue One, where I tell you how many people I estimate died in that movie. That was a stupid thing we did. I'm so happy that we don't keep doing it. It's also not a very good episode, but you should listen to it anyway because you probably can make fun of us for it. And if I know one thing about our viewers, it's that you love making fun of us. So
get those roasts.
Absolutely. And also, if you're a $10 patron, you can suggest upcoming bonus episodes. So do that. Like, seriously, it's $5, $10 a month. That's nothing. Pocket change.
And you get your favorite podcasters talking about the Lion King 1.5. What could be better than that?
You know what can be better than that?
A special shout out.
For our $10 patrons? Yeah.
Yeah, like Julia, Travis,
Yes.
my mom, and my Aunt Summer.
Yeah.
Like our special $10 patrons. Thank you for supporting us and helping us get to episode 100.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty cool bonus right there. Also, thanks to 25yearslaterstate.com for the endorsement. There's a bunch of really talented people doing a bunch of really talented writing. Go read their stuff. They're very talented. Also, thanks to the Highway for the use of our theme song, it's Suicide, also to take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're everywhere you can get music. Please go support them, listen to them, share them, pass them around to your friends. Let them listen. We'll be back on Thursday with Lion King.
The Twin Kings.
Oh,
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go